Good morning, class. This is Mr. Brooks here. Happy Wednesday. Today we are going to walk through the first couple sections of the history writing task. So I know all of you guys hopefully got the hard copy on last Friday the 13th before we were dismissed for the next 2 weeks and spring break as well. But if you didn't, I posted it, the hard copy, on Google Classroom. So you should be able to go there, print out a copy. Hopefully you have access to a printer to go and be able to complete this packet and then write an essay once you've completed the packet. And that's going to be due when we get back from spring break, okay? So this is the history writing task packet. We did one in fall for the Industrial Revolution, and this is one similar, but this is more about World War II and Hitler's rise to power. So the whole prompt, the assessment prompt, and the question you're going to be answering the entire time you work on this packet and the essay is, what were the most significant factors that enabled Hitler and the Nazi Party to gain and maintain power over the German people? And so what you're going to do is you're going to basically, I'll read through the assignment instructions, and you can follow along with me. And hopefully, if you watch this video and do this packet along with me as we do the video, you'll really understand it and be able to analyze these primary and secondary sources and be able to put together a really good a really good essay at the end. Okay, so the assignment. First, you're going to build the historical context about the topic of this assessment by brainstorming what you already know, reviewing key vocabulary related to the topic, predicting what arguments might be made in response to the prompt. And next, you're going to read the source documents. So after you've read all the source documents, you're going to answer some questions about them. So start by briefly scanning the source documents and the research questions that follow. Then go back and read the sources carefully to gain the information you will need to answer the research questions. You may take notes on the information you find in the sources as you read. Your notes will be available to you as you answer the questions. Secondly, after you finish writing this entire packet and analyzing these primary and secondary source documents, you're going to be writing an argumentative essay that answers the assessment prompts using the evidence from the sources. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to start reviewing and building the historical context and what we're talking about. So we've been studying World War II. We studied World War I. We studied the Great Depression, the 20s and 30s, and kind of like the rise of fascism and Hitler during that time. So we actually already know a lot about this issue from the stuff the things that we've already studied. So first thing we want to do is basically kind of brainstorm our prior knowledge about the issue, right? So the background, just at the very beginning, we're going to do this. This is on page 4 of your packet. So the background. Near the beginning of 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Within a year and a half, his Third Reich could rule without the limit of a parliament or constitution. All political parties other than Nazis were banned. Germany withdrew from the League of Nations, and Hitler assumed the title of Führer. Okay, so just that's a little background about where we are right now and how Hitler kind of rose to power during the 1930s. So brainstorm our prior knowledge. So this is the part in the book where we're kind of gonna go on the bottom of page 4 and brainstorm our prior knowledge. So we're gonna recall what we already know. So based on what we've learned in class and out, TV, internet, reading, newspapers, talking to relatives and friends, make a list of everything we know about Hitler, the Nazi Party, or Germany after World War I. And a couple of things to think about before we do this. How did World War I impact Germany? What were Hitler's goals and methods? So some of the things that you can just think about really quick that we've already talked about a lot in this class, especially going over some of the vocab from last week. So some of the things that we came up with were concentration camps, right? So as you go, kind of make a list here as I talk about them. And you could add more. I really want you to add more to this on your own as you think about it, because you're going to have more things that you probably know about Hitler and the Nazis and World War II than other folks. So just make it your own examples and brainstorm from your own brain. And if you have any other, if you happen to be around any other students and be able to exchange information with them, also try to learn from each other. So concentration camps, we know about that. The gas chamber, which is where a lot during the Holocaust, basically Jewish people were rounded up and any enemies of the Germans were sent to these concentration camps where they were basically executed by being sent to gas chambers. The swastika, so we know that is the symbol of the Nazis. Hitler designed the symbol was actually stolen from a piece of Indian art that actually means peace. So he's kind of appropriated another culture's material and made it into his own. And that's going to be a theme that he does a lot. He does a lot of trickery and claiming false stories about the Germans and trying to make them into, you know, a master race. So the third one is the Aryan master race, which is I was kind of just talking about. The Germans saw themselves as the Nazis, not just all Germans, but the Nazis saw themselves as a master race. And the Third Reich, which is the next thing I would think about, would be the Third Reich was basically Germany's third rise to being the world power. So the first time that Germany claimed that they were the world power was during the Holy Roman Empire. After the Holy Roman Empire fell, a lot of Northern Europe became kind of like the aftermath of the Holy Roman Empire. So they reigned. That was the first Reich, or reign. Reich is another word for reign, which means a time of rule. The Second Reich was during the Bolshevik Revolution, not the Bolshevik Revolution, but during Germany's time, during the 1800s when they basically had a second reign. The Third Reich is this planned reign right now when they want to basically take over all of Europe during the 1920s and 30s. And their plan was to rule Europe for the next 1,000 years. And so the next one that we can think about, propaganda. So propaganda, what is propaganda? Propaganda is basically like fake news, right? So propaganda is something that Hitler used a lot to brainwash German people into thinking that he was their savior, that he was going to be the one to save everything. It was basically a lot of lies, right? So he used a lot of, posters and kind of like used a lot of fact that the German people as a group weren't that informed about a lot of things, and also the fact that they were in a situation where they were coming out of like a real depression, right? And so they were kind of like hungry and angry. And so when you're hangry, you're kind of gullible and you're vulnerable to being kind of brainwashed by any kind of thing that sounds like it might be a better solution for what you're going through, right? Okay, so what else do we know about Hitler and World War II and the Nazis? So we know that Hitler was a soldier in World War I, right? So and then that Germany lost both World War I and World War II. And we also, the last thing we put here is the Nuremberg laws. The Nuremberg laws was a set of laws which basically forbid German Jews from participating in any kind of German social life. Right? They couldn't own businesses anymore. They couldn't marry non-Jews. They couldn't go to German schools. Basically, this was the beginning of the expulsion of the Jewish people from Germany. Okay, thank you. All right, so moving right along. So that is the brainstorming prior knowledge, right? After we're going to brainstorm your prior knowledge, you're going to turn to page 5, which is here, and you're going to start to fill out some basic definitions about the following words in the context of 1930s Germany. So this is before World War II, but basically a lot of kind of like the vocabulary that was being used by the Nazis in order to take over Germany and the German people and later on most of Europe. So the first one, anti-Semitism. So I'll just go through these as I go through, kind of take notes, use this as an opportunity to kind of do some of this background knowledge, and later you're going to be using this as we continue to analyze documents. But today we're just going to go over the first couple of sections of the packet, and each day I will post another video where we will go over this as a group. And finally, once we're finished, you will go back on your own and be able to put together an essay. And I will actually post a video also on how to form your essay. So every day, make sure you check your Google Classroom, follow along with me. We're going to finish this packet over these next 2 weeks. Okay, so anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is basically hostility or prejudice against Jewish people. Okay? So anti-Semitism is hostility or prejudice against Jewish people. So in the 1930s in Germany, Hitler basically blamed Jewish people, all the problems of the Germany on the Jewish people, the economy, social problems, any kind of problem he blamed on the Jews. So anti-Semitism is just hostility or prejudice against Jewish people. The next one, nationalism. Nationalism is a strong feeling of pride or devotion to one's country. So basically, it's a good thing, right? Everyone's proud to be an American. Everyone's proud to be German. But in Hitler's situation in Germany, they kind of took it too far, where they were like, we're the best and everyone else is inferior, and we're going to basically stomp out, all other inferior countries. So yeah, nationalism, a strong feeling of pride or devotion to one's country. The next one, propaganda. Propaganda is, like I said before, the spreading of ideas to promote a cause or damage an opposing cause. So basically, it's basically putting out news that is going to favor you in some way and damage another person in some way, right? So it's not equal, right? And so whatever you're basically trying to like promote your cause and damage another cause. Okay, and then a peasant. A peasant is a poor farmer of low social status. This is really important during this situation because after World War One, a lot of the German population was very hungry and they were of low social status and they were peasants. And so Hitler basically promised all these poor peasant farmers that they were actually the key to saving Germany, and that by putting them to work and by having them produce food, that they would be kind of like the population who would bring Germany back. And so he promised them a lot and got them on his side, and the peasants were a big reason why why Hitler was able to basically take over Germany and the rest of Europe. Unemployment, high numbers of people out of work. So just like I was saying before, after World War One, Germany was in a super recession. I mean, it was like they basically just started printing money without any, like just going to the printer and printing money without any, having it based on any kind of like commodity like gold or oil or anything that's worth money. So when you do that, that's really dangerous. And basically all Germans were out of work. It was basically a recipe. So this is all the time when Hitler was kind of like campaigning to be the Fuhrer, to be the chancellor, to be the president of Germany, to be the leader of Germany. And so when you have a lot of people out of work, you have a lot of poor farmers, and you start to come in with your propaganda where you're promising them all these things, you got a pretty captive audience. And if you can deliver on any of these promises, you're really going to be in a good place as taking over as a leader. So then the next one, the Reichstag. If you remember this from when we were from our book, it's basically the temporary German government until the Nazis took over in 1933. So after World War One, after Germany lost World War One, the Reichstag was this temporary government where kind of like so basically when Germany was going through its economic problems, this temporary government came in and took over Germany until the Nazis took it over in 1933. Okay, and then boycott, refusing to buy products. So one thing that the Nazis did in order to basically damage the Jews, and it was a big part of the anti-Semitic movement, was they set up a boycott where they first forced all German people to boycott Jewish stores. So he set up a day where you're not to buy anything from any Jewish stores. You're not to like promote any kind of, just basically refusing to buy products from Jewish people as a way to basically start to ruin their businesses and drive them out of Germany. Okay, the last two, pageantry, spectacular display or pomp, parades. Basically, pageantry is like the way that Hitler was able to, with huge parades and huge, basically fanfare and incredible dramatic scenes, was able to basically brainwash the German people and almost like, just mesmerize them into a state of like this feverish, blind mob following, this charismatic cult leader. So like, like say if you're a little kid and you go to like the 4th of July parade, it looks super good, everyone's waving flags, you're gonna get into it. But this was like the opposite. This was like people getting into like a guy who was going to basically kill 4 million Jews and getting behind them in his parades and thinking that this was a good thing that they were following. So, the pageantry. Be careful not to get caught up in the pageantry of things. Mysticism, the last one. The belief that there is hidden meaning in life. Okay, so one thing about Hitler was that not only was he, a a leader who kind of like, killed 4 million Jews. But the Nazis as a group didn't really believe in God. They didn't really they believed in evil, and they believed in the occult, and they believed in a lot of like kind of dark, I don't want to say satanic kind of thinking, but like they had a lot of like kind of like dark thoughts and dark occult mystic kind of beliefs that the Germans basically thought, and the Nazis thought that they were descendants of a superhuman race of people, and that basically they were better than everyone else, and that there was hidden meaning in life. And so we'll get more into mysticism and that later. But the last thing we'll do today, though, I want to end this out with the last two examples. So when you move down to the bottom of page 5, the evidence argument chart, it says, next, to help visualize your thoughts, use your prior knowledge to add to this chart with evidence and or supporting reasons. After you make your list, circle the reasons why you think might have been most significant. Do this before reading the documents. You can update this later. So like basically in this document chart right here, kind of just think about, after you looked at the definitions of like the words in the context of 1930s Germany, and also your brainstorming prior knowledge chart, what are some of the main reasons, before you've even read any of these sources, what are some of the main reasons why you think might have led people in Germany to support Hitler and the Nazi Party? So the one thing that pops out to me right away is propaganda, right? So propaganda, he was really able to use propaganda as a way to convince German people that he was going to be the savior to all their economic and social problems, right? So he was going to get them out of poverty. He was going to get them jobs. He was going to get them food. So he really used this and he also used a lot of propaganda to like say how evil the Germans and the Jews and the communists were. Basically, it's fake news for his gain, and it was really an effective tool to help him gain power. The next one I would say that led the German people to support Hitler and the Nazi Party was nationalism, right? They were so into being Germans, and Hitler kind of swept them up in this pageantry, and also out of fear for not following along with German nationalism. Like if you stepped out of line and you did anything anti-German, you would probably be sent to these concentration camps as well. So being proud to be German, nationalism, was something that Hitler was really able to use to his advantage to get the German people to support him. Anti-Semitism. So Hitler was really able, through the propaganda and nationalism, to convince the Germans, non-Jewish German people, that the Jews were the causes to all the problems of Germany, and that they should boycott their businesses, that they should be eliminated. I mean, later on it came into, he called it the final solution, where he wanted to basically exterminate all the Jewish people. And actually it didn't just stop with Jewish people. It went down to anyone who was not German, basically. So it was like Catholics, the disabled, gay, black, everyone else. The last reason was that led people in Germany to support Hitler and the Nazi Party was high unemployment, right? So you had all these people out of work during the 1930s. And Hitler was coming in and saying, "I will get you all back to work. I will get you food. I will put the poor farmers, the poor peasant farmers, everyone will go back to work." And all these things: propaganda, nationalism, anti-Semitism, unemployment. And also, I'll just throw in the last one, fear, because we're going to talk about later the Gestapo, the secret police, and the fact that, there's this, people are seeing people get rounded up and put onto trains and brought to concentration camps. So, we'll talk about the fear factor later. But I would say the top factors that led people in Germany to support Hitler and the Nazi Party were propaganda, nationalism, anti-Semitism, and unemployment. Okay, so that is the first two sections that we will go over on page 4 and page 5. I will start a little bit about page 6 just to get us started on these documents, and I'll do more tomorrow. But just if you turn to page 6, so basically this is what you're gonna do with the rest of the sections. So you're gonna read. So on page 6. Reading the source documents. You're going to read, highlight, underline, and annotate the source documents. Annotate means to underline and kind of like make notes as you go. As you read, highlight, underline, and annotate the documents, decide how each can be used and label them accordingly. For each document, you should try to consider who created the source. So answer these questions as you go. Who created the source? What type of source was this? When was it created? Where was it created? Who was it created for? Why was it created? And so, so as you look at this, so this first document is called Document 1, Antisemitism After World War I. And it's written by Phyllis Goldstein and Harold Evans. And it's called A Convenient Hatred, the History of Anti-Semitism, Brookline, Massachusetts, Facing History and Ourselves, 2012, page 259. So that's the citation at the beginning, and it kind of answers all the questions there. Who created it? What type of source was it? It's an article, right, from a book. I mean, it's a piece from a book. When was it created? 2012. So it's not a primary source; it's a secondary source because the primary source is created at the time of when the event was happening. So let's read the quick excerpt from this book. Henry Buxbaum was one of more than 100,000 Jews who served in the German army during World War I. He returned home to Germany to find that anti-Semitism was sweeping the nation. He later recalled, "You could taste anti-Semitism everywhere. The air of Germany was permeated by it. All the unavoidable consequences of military defeat, revolution, a ruinous inflation, the Versailles Peace Treaty, the loss of territories in the east and west, the unsettling social changes following in their wake, each and everything was blamed on the Jew and or the communists, who, for the convinced Jew hater, were interchangeable. Anti-Semitism did not begin in Germany or anywhere else in 1918. Jews had been regarded as dangerous outsiders for centuries, and anti-Jewish feeling usually intensified in times of war and other upheaval." So the guiding question when we look at this document, and as I was going through, I was actually underlining quite a few things, and I'll tell you what I kind of underlined and what stood out to me. But basically the question says, what does this document show about the factors that enabled Hitler and the Nazi Party to gain and maintain power over the German people? So it basically said, if you go back and look at some of the parts and where I underlined, you can't really see it, but all the you could taste the ant. So basically this guy had served his country, Germany, with another 100,000 other German Jews in World War I. He returned home to Germany after the Germans lost that war, and he said that basically he could just taste the anti-Semitism everywhere. He could taste the hatred of Jews by the other Germans everywhere because they were basically blaming the Jewish people on losing World War I. And so the Versailles, they just said all the unavoidable consequences of military defeat. Like he said, a ruinous inflation, they blamed that on the Jewish people. The Versailles Peace Treaty, which is the peace treaty that Germany was forced to sign at the end of World War I, they blamed that on the Jewish leadership at that time. The loss of territories in the east and west, so Germany lost a lot of land, both in France and in Poland. That they blamed that on the Jewish people. The unsettling social changes following the wake, and everything was blamed on the Jew and the communists. So basically what you're really going to come out of this with is what I would write, or what you should write, and what you should add on to in addition is under the guiding question: anti-Semitism has been around for centuries, right? The Jewish soldiers in the war for Germany, this Jewish soldier fought in the war for Germany, but he returned home and the Germans hated him. So basically, even after fighting in World War I for Germany, returning home, this German Jew was basically kind of writing this article about how much anti-Semitism he was feeling and how surprised and disgusted he was by it, right, after he had fought for his country. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to do here really quick is I'm going to talk about on page 7, document number 2. It's called A German Children's Book from 1931. Okay, from the German children's book, The Hitler Youth Quakes, 1931, by Karl Schwissinger, reprinted in Weimar, Germany, and the Rise of Hitler by the Choices Program at Brown University. Okay, context. Heine is the 15-year-old son of an alcoholic, unemployed communist father. Heine is forced by Stoppel, the leader of a local communist group gang, to join his group. Heine is disgusted by the group's loose morals and the constant brawling over the group's leadership. In addition, the communists ridicule and rob him. Despite the opposition of his father and Stoppel, Heine makes friends with members of the local Hitler Youth group. Okay, the passage. He, Heine, really likes the essay. They looked clean, orderly, robust, and their leather shone. They reminded him of order, good breeding, and discipline, just like it was in the old stories. Those lads, too, had worn leather gaiters. They marched past him one day, and each one like the other, shining, lively, and fresh, a flag up front. For an hour, he marched alongside them with only one wish in his heart, to be allowed to march in these rows with these chaps who were young like him, who sang songs. He was almost brought to tears with pride and happiness. These are the Nazis. And so basically, this is a children's book that was written for children, right? Basically trying to the first part basically talks about he's a 15-year-old son of an alcoholic, right? And his father, he's encouraged to join this local communist youth gang. He doesn't like the way that they're loose morals. So basically, this article is kind of talking bad about the communists and really trying to talk about how incredibly impressive these Nazi soldiers are to the Hitler youth, right? And so basically, what this article is saying is children under the age of 18 were easily influenced and inspired to be like the Nazis, right? So you're ashamed out of being a communist, and you were really, really praised, and it was like basically they were promoting how good it was to be a Nazi for Hitler youth. And so you got a lot of Hitler youth trying to from birth being indoctrinated that being a Nazi was a good thing and that's what they should aspire to be. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do today. Tomorrow I will go over documents 3, 4, and 5 in this book, in this packet, and we will keep moving. And hopefully by the end of the week and the early next week, we will be on to trying to move on to starting to complete our essay. So thank you very much, class. Email me. Go to Google Classroom if you have any questions. And good luck on everything, and stay safe out there. Thanks.